All right, welcome back to the Make America Garrett Again podcast, your cure for the mainstream media. This show is your safe space to talk about persuasion, politics, and the effect they have on your life and liberty. Welcome back for another episode. So glad to have you here. Recorded the last handful of episodes in my car, and I'm not done with that. Honestly, it seems like everybody's still enjoying those. Our numbers are still growing. The show is still growing. Every single week, there are new people from new places all over the country and sometimes all over the world, and they're listening to these episodes and going back and listening to the old episodes. So that's how I know that you like it, and that's how I know that we're doing something good here. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of it and bearing with me as we've kind of moved to this irregular schedule. Sooner or later, we're going to get back on track, and I'll be in the studio every time. But for now, I'm just going to keep putting things out as I can. And when I see something that I find interesting and that I think you might find interesting, then I'm going to record it one way or the other, whether it's here in the studio or in my car on the way home, whatever it is. But most importantly, you're going to get good content. You're going to get things that are going to help you understand what's going on in the world, and also the persuasion side of it and understanding what they're trying to get you to believe or what they're doing there as well. So I've seen some headlines floating around over the past week or so, and a lot of progressives are really counting this as kind of a big win, and a lot of conservatives are freaking out a little bit, and they're worried that a dangerous precedent is being set and that this could be a massive step back for the Second Amendment, and if nothing else, just a big show of hypocrisy on the part of our justice system. So as you've probably seen, I've got an article here from NPR. Headline says, Supreme Court allows Sandy Hook family's case against Remington Arms to proceed. As you've probably heard over the past year or two, there's a group of families who had kids in the Sandy Hook shooting, and they want to sue Remington for Remington's part in the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary. I want to clarify here, they're not suing Remington because Remington made the rifle that was used in the Sandy Hook shooting. They're suing Remington for the way that they advertised the rifle that was used in the shooting. So they understand, as well as most people do, that guns don't kill people on their own, that you can leave a gun laying in the corner or laying in the gun safe or wherever it is, and it's not going to get up and harm someone on its own. What they're claiming is that the way that Remington advertised that rifle, the quote here is, they knowingly marketed and promoted the Bushmaster XM15 E2S rifle for use in assaults against human beings. So what they're trying to say is that it was advertised in a way that showed that this gun is meant to hurt people. If you want to hurt somebody, this is the gun to buy. They mention a little bit lower in the article, the Sandy Hook family say Remington published promotional materials that promised military-proven performance for a mission-adaptable shooter in need of the ultimate combat weapons system. It says here, they also accused the company of fostering a lone gunman narrative as it promoted the Bushmaster, citing an ad that proclaimed, "Forces of opposition, bow down. You are single-handedly outnumbered." So basically, in bringing this lawsuit, they are claiming that Remington was trying to attract someone who might want to hurt mass amounts of people, and that with the language of, being outnumbered and military proven, that of course in military conflicts, your goal and your opposition is to kill other humans. They are claiming that this advertisement was far too appealing to someone like Adam Lanza who wanted to hurt other human beings. That is the case that they are making. Now, I see a couple of issues with this case. First of all, even in the military, they don't use AR-15s in the military, but even in the military, we're told that we use our military for defense, that we're defending our allies, we're defending our interests, we're defending our freedom, that anything that's used from our military is purely, to make sure that we're taking care of our citizens at home, that it's not just an offensive means to kill people. Now, if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know that the truth is we use our military to help rich, powerful people become more rich and powerful. But the narrative that we're sold from the military aspect of it is, of course, that it's a defensive thing. So to me, that doesn't scream that, you're trying to hurt anybody. And also on top of that, this kid, I think he was 15, if I remember correctly, it was his mother's rifle. So he didn't have any part in purchasing that rifle. His mom bought it. She paid for it, and she had all kinds of guns. Perhaps you could argue that maybe that advertising was what caused him to choose that particular gun to use in his shooting. But either way, the core of their argument is not that Remington made the gun. Their argument is that Remington marketed the gun in a way that would be appealing for somebody who would want to conduct some sort of mass shooting. So they have asked several courts, and it's moved on up the ladder throughout the courts until it finally made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. Remington is asking these courts not to hear this case, that they would be granted protection so that they cannot be sued because someone used their gun in a horrific tragedy. And I think it's pretty easy to understand why they're doing that. They didn't pull the trigger. They didn't help do any of the planning. They didn't hurt anybody in this. They just happened to, unfortunately, be the ones who created and sold the weapon. So they've been asking the court to protect them from being sued like this. So finally, we get our ruling from the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has said that they will not block these lawsuits against Remington. One thing, if I remember correctly, Chrisanne Hall said that since they didn't say what the vote was, sometimes you'll see that it was a 7-2 Supreme Court decision or, 6-3, something like that. Since it doesn't say, Chrisanne Hall said that means that this was a unanimous decision, that conservatives, liberals, moderates, all across the board, all the Supreme Court justices who were in on this all agreed that they were not going to protect Remington from being sued. So why would they do this? Why would they allow Remington to be sued when another person who had nothing to do with Remington was the one to use their product to carry out this horrible tragedy? And this is where the Facebook lawyers jump in and they say, oh, well, if that's the case, I can sue McDonald's for making me fat, or I can sue GM for making cars that people drive drunk in, or I can sue Bacardi and Kenny G for the conception of my second child. Whatever it is, people suddenly start jumping to those conclusions. And so the question is, does that mean we can sue McDonald's for making us fat? According to this Supreme Court decision, yes. Yes, you can. And I'm here to tell you that that's a good thing. This was the right decision that was handed down by them. Now, this seems a little bit complicated and a little bit silly at first, but when I explain this, it's going to make perfect sense, and it's going to be so simple, you're going to wonder how you missed this from the beginning. A lot of tensions and a lot of emotions are up because guns are such an emotional subject. And we've talked before, when it comes to emotional subjects, it becomes very difficult for us to see clearly what the issue is. And this is part of the way that we've evolved as humans. When you were back generations and generations and generations ago, when you were walking through the woods looking to gather up berries or whatever to eat, and you saw something that looked scary and dangerous to you, maybe you see a tree branch that looks like a snake, you're going to jump back and you're going to go, whoa, that's a snake. And if you look at it for a minute and you're still not quite sure, everything in you is locked in saying, no, that's something dangerous. I need to stay away from that. And even if you are fairly certain that it is just a branch and it's not a snake, you're going to err on the side of staying away from it just in case, because you don't want to be wrong. And that's carried over into us and the way that we hold our opinions and the way we hold things today. And especially if something is emotional, if something draws up that fire in you, you are much more likely to reject any and all facts, any and all counterpoints, anything else that all you know is that this is dangerous and you are holding your ground because it feels like it's a life or death thing. This is why it's almost impossible to get anywhere when you're talking about guns or you're talking about abortion or sometimes religion, any of those things. It's hard to cover much ground on because you're just not going to change the way that people are because there's emotion invested in it. So in this, it's muddied up everyone's views of it because there's something so emotional at the center of it. So if it's so confusing for us, why was it so easy that the Supreme Court would be in complete agreement across the board? Can you really sue a corporation for selling something that was misused to hurt other people? Can you really sue anybody for anything? Yes, you can. See, Remington was asking for protection that the government would stop anyone from being able to sue them. And as you've learned on this show, when government steps in and tries to fix things, tries to protect things, tries to even the score a little bit, there tend to be worse side effects than the thing that they were originally trying to stop or protect. And it goes much the same way here. If you want to stop Remington from being sued because there was an accident with one of their guns, even if they didn't have anything to do with it, then that also means that the government might protect oil companies, even if there's an oil spill. That they might protect car companies, even if cars are rolled out with some sort of defect that's dangerous. It means that they might protect Monsanto from selling food that may be harmful for human consumption. It could mean a million other things as well. And so the last thing that we want is for any company or corporation to have special protection from the government. So many of the complaints that people have about capitalism are actually complaints about corporatism, where big corporations are able to buy their way into special privileges from the government. And so many of these monopolies that we see today would not happen in a real free market, in real capitalism. And so in this instance, where you have Remington, who a lot of conservatives would consider to be one of the good guys, if we're being fair, if we want to do things the right way, then we allow them to be sued. And they're going to go in front of a human judge who has common sense, hopefully, right? And they're possibly going to be going in front of a human jury of fellow citizens. And those people will be able to hear that case. And there's a very good chance that that judge may even throw it out early. And he may say from the beginning that Remington had absolutely no responsibility in this shooting. But much in the same way, with the Patriot Act and things like that, people were so quick to trade their liberty for a little bit of security, giving away so many of their rights and so much of their privacy just because there's a big boogeyman out there. In the same way, conservatives are tempted in this instance to give away their power in the judicial system for a little bit of security for a gun maker. So in other words, you allow Remington to be sued, and you allow them to go before the people. And you let the people throw this out. You don't need the government to throw it out. You let the people make the right decision when it comes to this case. Chrisanne Hall said in her show, which I'm using a reference here, she said, "The day when you trust government more than society, you might as well check out of the whole Republican experiment." And when she says Republican there, she's not talking about the party. She's talking about our republic. So, when you see conservatives freaking out, your friends are losing their minds because this means that, you're going to be able to sue the spoon company for feeding you too much ice cream, you simply agree with them. Just say, yep, that's right. We're on the right track. And it's a good thing for us to be able to sue each other over anything. And hopefully that freedom remains. And it's up to the courts and it's up to juries of our peers to throw those things out when they're absolutely frivolous. Hey, I want to thank you so much for listening to another episode. I know this was a short one, but I just wanted to get this out there while I had some time. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. Username is Garrett again. You can email me, garrettagain@pm.me. If you want to donate any money to the show, you can donate at PayPal. Same thing, use my email address, garrettagain@pm.me. I'm also on Bitbacker if you want to donate any crypto. Username there is also Garrett again. As always, Garrett just has one R. So if you're looking for me, just make sure that you spell it right. And I will be back maybe even in a few days. I'm thinking about doing an episode on this Colin Kaepernick thing just because I feel like this is another one that everybody is getting completely wrong. And I would love to just try to set the record straight a little bit and talk about some of the things that are at play here. If you haven't rated the show, please go to iTunes, give me 5 stars, help me out. And thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay kind, stay vigilant, stay free. Get out of here.